I was watching my 7-year-old granddaughter play innocently under the wedding reception table when she handed me a note that could have killed her, and I realized someone in my own family was trying to murder a child to get revenge on me. My name is Matthew Reynolds. I'm 68 years old, and until that Saturday afternoon in June, I thought I knew everyone I loved. It was my son, David's wedding day at the Riverside Country Club in Sacramento, California. One of those perfect days where everything seems to align just right. The Sacramento River sparkled in the background. White roses adorned every table, and the California sun cast that golden light that makes everything look like a movie scene. David had married Sarah, a wonderful kindergarten teacher he'd met 3 years ago, and I couldn't have been happier for them. After his difficult divorce 5 years earlier, seeing him smile again, really smile, filled this old man's heart with more joy than I could express. The reception was in full swing. About 150 guests filled the elegant ballroom, the sound of laughter mixing with soft jazz from the live band. I was sitting at the family table, wearing my best navy suit, watching the controlled chaos that is any wedding reception. My daughter Lisa was helping coordinate things. My brother Tom was already 3 beers deep and telling embarrassing stories about David's childhood. And my granddaughter Emily, David's daughter from his first marriage, was doing what 7-year-olds do, exploring every corner of the venue. Emily has type 1 diabetes. She was diagnosed when she was 4, and managing it has become second nature to our family. We all know her routine: checking blood sugar levels, counting carbohydrates, timing her insulin injections. She wears a continuous glucose monitor on her arm, and we're all vigilant about what she eats. It's not a burden, it's just part of loving Emily. As the afternoon wore on, I noticed Emily had made friends with some other children at the wedding. They were playing hide-and-seek among the tables, their laughter cutting through the adult conversations. I kept one eye on her while chatting with relatives I hadn't seen in months. That's when I saw her crawl under our family table. From my chair, I could see her little legs sticking out from beneath the white tablecloth. She was giggling with her new friends, probably thinking she'd found the perfect hiding spot. I was about to call her out when I felt a small hand grab my wrist. "Grandpa Matt," Emily whispered, her head popping up beside my chair. Her blonde curls were messy from crawling around, and her flower girl dress had a small grass stain on the knee. "I found something weird under the table." She pressed a folded piece of paper into my palm. The paper was slightly damp and had been torn from what looked like a napkin. In pencil, written in careful block letters. It read, "Add sugar to Emily's plate when no one is looking." My blood ran cold. Anyone who knew Emily understood that adding sugar to her food, without accounting for it in her insulin dosing, could send her blood glucose levels dangerously high. In severe cases, it could lead to diabetic ketoacidosis, a life-threatening condition. I looked around the table. David was dancing with Sarah. Lisa was taking photos. Tom was still telling stories to anyone who'd listen. The note could have been placed by any of the dozens of people who had access to our table throughout the afternoon. "Emily, sweetheart," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, "where exactly did you find this?" "It was taped under the table right by your chair, Grandpa." "Is it important?" "The writing looks funny." I helped Emily back to her seat and excused myself, claiming I needed some air. But instead of heading outside, I went to the venue coordinator and asked to see the security footage from the reception area. "I'm sorry, Mr. Reynolds," she said, checking her tablet. "Our camera system has been down for maintenance since yesterday. We were planning to have it fixed next week. Of course it was down." I returned to the table, studying every face, trying to read every expression. Who among these people, my family, my friends, would want to hurt an innocent child? And why? As I watched Emily carefully eating her dinner, her mother Jennifer monitoring her blood sugar levels and calculating insulin doses, a terrible realization began to form in my mind. This wasn't random. This was targeted. Someone knew about Emily's diabetes, knew how dangerous excess sugar could be for her, and had deliberately tried to weaponize it. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't really about Emily at all. She was just a means to an end. This was about hurting me, using my granddaughter to destroy me in the most devastating way possible. The question was, who hated me enough to go this far? The rest of the reception passed in a blur of forced smiles and paranoid observation. I watched everyone who approached our table, everyone who spoke to Emily, everyone who so much as glanced in her direction. The joy of my son's wedding had been replaced by a cold dread that settled in my chest like a stone. I thought about my past, trying to identify who might harbor such deep resentment. I'd been a construction foreman for most of my career, retiring 5 years ago from Reynolds Construction, the company I'd built from nothing. Like any businessman, I'd made enemies along the way. Contractors I'd refused to hire, competitors who'd lost bids to my company, employees I'd had to let go during the 2008 recession. But this felt personal. This felt like family. During the cake cutting, I noticed Jennifer being extra cautious about Emily's portion size. She tested Emily's blood sugar, calculated the carbohydrates, and administered the appropriate insulin dose. I wanted to tell her about the note, but what would I say? That someone at the wedding wanted to poison her daughter. That I suspected it might be someone we both trusted. Instead, I made sure to stay close to Emily for the rest of the evening. When she went to the bathroom, I walked with her. When she wanted to dance, I joined her on the dance floor. If someone was planning to hurt her, they'd have to go through me first. As the reception wound down and guests began to leave, I still hadn't identified the source of the threat. The note remained folded in my jacket pocket, a reminder that somewhere among the people I loved most was someone who wished me the worst kind of harm. That night, after helping clean up and seeing Emily safely home with her mother, I sat in my study with a glass of bourbon and the note spread out on my desk. The block letters stared back at me, anonymous and menacing. I'd spent 43 years in construction, dealing with all kinds of people, solving all kinds of problems. But this was different. This was someone who knew my family intimately, someone who had access to my grandson's wedding, someone who understood that the best way to destroy me was to hurt the people I loved most. As I sat there in the darkness, one name kept coming back to me, a name I hadn't spoken aloud in 15 years. A name that belonged to someone I'd hoped never to see again, but surely it couldn't be him. Surely he wouldn't go this far, would he? Before I continue with what happened next, if you're enjoying this story, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more real-life dramatic stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. The name that haunted my thoughts that night was Richard. My younger brother Richard, who I hadn't seen or spoken to in 15 years. The brother I'd helped raise after our parents died in a car crash when he was just 16 and I was 28. The brother I'd given a job at my construction company, promoted to supervisor, and eventually made a partner. The same brother who had embezzled nearly $200,000 from our company and disappeared without a trace in 2008. I'd covered the loss with my own savings to keep the business afloat during the recession. I'd never pressed charges because despite everything, he was still my blood. But the betrayal had cut deeper than any knife, and I'd made it clear to the entire family that Richard was no longer welcome at any family gathering. But surely he wouldn't be at David's wedding. Surely no one would have invited him without telling me. The next morning, I called my daughter Lisa. She was already at David and Sarah's house, helping them open wedding gifts and organize everything before they left for their honeymoon in Hawaii. "Dad, you sound tired," Lisa said when she answered. "Are you feeling okay? I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Was Richard at the wedding yesterday?" There was a long pause. "Too long, Lisa." "Dad, we didn't think you'd notice. He stayed in the back, didn't come to the reception. He just wanted to see David get married. My hands started shaking. Who invited him? Another pause. David did. He's been in touch with Uncle Richard for about 2 years. Dad, Richard's changed. He's been going to therapy. He's got a steady job in Phoenix. He's been paying back money to people he hurt. David thought maybe it was time for the family to heal. I hung up and drove straight to David's house. When I arrived, David was loading suitcases into his car, while Sarah organized gift boxes in the garage. He looked up when he saw me approaching, and I could see in his eyes that he knew this conversation was coming. Dad, before you say anything, where is he staying? I interrupted. David straightened up, meeting my gaze. The Holiday Inn on Arden Way. Dad, he's different. He's been sober for 8 years. He's paid back almost half the money he took, and he's still working on the rest. He wanted to make amends. Did you tell him about Emily's diabetes? The question seemed to catch him off guard. What? Why would... Yes, probably. It comes up in conversation about family. Why? I showed him the note. David's face went white as he read it. Sarah appeared beside him, looking concerned. Someone put this under our table at the reception, I explained. Emily found it. If she hadn't brought it to me, if someone had actually followed these instructions, you think Uncle Richard did this? David's voice was barely a whisper. I don't know what to think anymore. Sarah took the note, examining it carefully. As a kindergarten teacher, she was familiar with different types of handwriting. This looks like someone trying to disguise their normal handwriting. See how deliberate each letter is. And the pressure is inconsistent, like they were nervous. Dad, David said, I know you have every right to hate Richard, but this doesn't sound like him. When we've talked, he's always asked about Emily specifically. He knows about her diabetes, but he also knows how dangerous it is. He's asked me to send pictures, to tell him how she's doing in school. He seems to genuinely care about her. People can fake caring, son. Especially when they want something. What would he want? That was the question I couldn't answer. What did Richard want? Forgiveness, revenge, or something else entirely? I drove to the Holiday Inn and asked the desk clerk to call Richard's room. My heart was pounding as I waited in the lobby, surrounded by the generic furniture and artificial plants that all budget hotels seem to have. When the elevator doors opened, I almost didn't recognize him. The Richard I remembered was overweight, disheveled, often smelling of alcohol even at 10 in the morning. This Richard was thin, well-groomed, wearing a simple button-down shirt and khakis. His hair was graying at the temples, and there were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there 15 years ago. Matthew, he said quietly, not approaching. I wasn't sure you'd want to see me. I didn't think I'd ever see you again. We sat in the lobby's seating area, the awkwardness thick between us. Richard looked older than his 53 years, but there was something different about his eyes. They were clearer than I remembered. I know you probably think I shouldn't have come to the wedding, he began. But David's been writing to me for 2 years. He invited me. I sat in the back. I didn't go to the reception. I just wanted to see him happy. I pulled out the note and placed it on the coffee table between us. Richard picked it up, read it, and his face went through a series of emotions, confusion, realization, and then horror. Jesus Christ, Matthew. You think I wrote this? Did you? No. His voice was firm, steady. Matthew, I know I have no right to ask you to believe anything I say, but I would never hurt Emily. Never. She's an innocent child, and she's family. You hurt family before. I hurt adults who could defend themselves. I stole money, not... This is about killing a child. This is evil, Matthew. Whatever you think of me, I'm not evil. I wanted to believe him, but 15 years of anger and betrayal don't disappear in one conversation. If you didn't write it, then who did? Richard was quiet for a moment, studying the note again. Have you considered that this might not be about you at all? What if this is about Emily specifically, or her parents? What do you mean? Think about it. Jennifer and David have been divorced for 5 years. Jennifer's remarried now, right? To that accountant, Kevin. What if this is about custody? What if someone wants Jennifer to look like a negligent mother? If Emily had ended up in the hospital from a diabetic emergency at David's wedding, who would get blamed? The thought hadn't occurred to me, but it made a terrible kind of sense. Jennifer and Kevin had been talking about moving to Portland for Kevin's job. David had been fighting it in court because he didn't want to lose time with Emily. You think someone wanted to sabotage Jennifer? I think someone wanted to create a situation where Emily would be hurt and Jennifer would be held responsible. A diabetic emergency at a wedding where Jennifer was managing Emily's care. That could change a custody arrangement pretty quickly. As much as I hated to admit it, Richard was making sense. But that raised an even more disturbing question. Who at the wedding would want to manipulate a custody battle? And then I remembered something that made my blood run cold. Kevin hadn't come to the wedding. He'd claimed he was sick, but Jennifer had seemed upset about it, like they'd had an argument. And Kevin's sister Melissa had been at the wedding. She'd been sitting just 2 tables away from us. Melissa, who worked as a legal assistant and would understand exactly how a medical emergency could affect custody proceedings. Melissa, who had access to our table throughout the reception. Melissa, who had every reason to want Jennifer and Emily to move to Portland with Kevin. I left Richard at the hotel with more questions than answers. The drive home gave me time to think about Melissa, Kevin's sister. I'd only met her a handful of times at Emily's birthday parties and school events, but I remembered her as pushy and opinionated. She worked for a law firm in Sacramento and had never been shy about offering unsolicited legal advice. More importantly, she'd been vocal about wanting Kevin and Jennifer to move to Portland. I'd overheard her at Emily's 7th birthday party just 3 months ago, telling Jennifer how much better the schools were in Portland, how Kevin could advance his career there, how Emily would benefit from a fresh start. When I got home, I called Jennifer. "Hi, Matthew. How are you feeling after yesterday? It was such a beautiful wedding. Jennifer, I need to ask you about something. It might sound strange, but did you notice anything unusual with Emily's food at the reception?" "Unusual how?" "She ate carefully. I monitored everything. Her blood sugar was perfect all evening." "Why?" I hesitated. Jennifer was a good mother, but she was also anxious about Emily's condition. The last thing I wanted was to send her into a panic over something that might be nothing, just being an overprotective grandfather, I guess. "How are things with the Portland situation?" There was a long sigh. "Kevin's really pushing for it. The job offer is amazing, and his sister Melissa keeps sending me articles about Portland schools and diabetes support programs there. She's been very insistent that it would be best for everyone." "How insistent?" "She calls me almost daily. Yesterday morning, before the wedding, she called, and we got into an argument about it. She said I was being selfish, that I was holding Kevin back from his dream job just because I didn't want to deal with David's custody schedule. It really upset me. My hands tightened on the phone. "Jennifer, where exactly was Melissa sitting at the reception?" "At table 7, I think." "Why are you asking all these questions, Matthew?" "I'll explain later. Right now I need you to promise me something. Don't leave Emily alone with anyone you don't completely trust. Not even for a few minutes. Matthew, you're scaring me. Just promise me." After hanging up, I sat in my study and tried to piece together what I knew. Melissa had motive. She wanted her brother's relationship to succeed, which meant getting Jennifer to Portland. She had opportunity. She was at the wedding with access to our table. She had knowledge. As a legal assistant, she'd understand how a medical emergency could affect custody arrangements, but something still felt off. The note was too obvious, too traceable. If Melissa was smart enough to concoct a scheme to influence a custody battle, why would she leave written evidence? I was still puzzling over this when my phone rang. It was David. "Dad, we're about to board our flight to Hawaii, but I needed to call you." Sarah and I were talking about the note, and she remembered something. During the reception, she went to the bathroom and saw someone coming out of the area near our table. She didn't think anything of it at the time, but now, who was it? That's the thing. She couldn't see clearly. They were walking away. But she said it was definitely a woman, wearing a dark blue dress. Medium height, blonde hair. I thought about the women at the wedding. Melissa had been wearing navy blue. So had my daughter Lisa. So had Sarah's Aunt Carol, and probably a dozen other guests. David, did Sarah notice anything else? Anything distinctive? She said the woman was walking quickly, like she was in a hurry or nervous about something. And she was carrying something in her hand, but Sarah couldn't see what it was. After David hung up to catch his flight, I decided to take a more direct approach. I drove to Jennifer's house, where Emily was spending her post-wedding Sunday watching cartoons and playing with the new toys she'd received from wedding guests. Grandpa Matt. Emily jumped up from the couch when I arrived, still wearing her frozen pajamas. "Did you come to play with me?" "Of course, sweetheart. But first, I wanted to ask you about yesterday. You found that paper under the table, remember?" "Uh-huh. It was stuck with tape. Can you show me exactly how it was positioned?" Jennifer watched with concern as Emily crawled under their dining room table to demonstrate. "It was right here," Emily said, pointing to the underside of the table. "Like someone stuck it there so only a kid crawling around would find it. That detail hit me like a punch to the gut. The note wasn't placed randomly. It was positioned specifically where a child would discover it. Someone wanted Emily to find that note. But why?" "Emily," I said gently, "after you found the note, did anyone ask you about it? Did anyone seem interested in what you'd found?" Emily scrunched up her face, thinking. "Well, when I came back to the table after giving it to you, that lady asked me where I'd been." "Which lady?" "The one in the blue dress. She was sitting at the table with the flowers that smelled funny." Jennifer and I exchanged glances. "Honey, can you remember anything else about her?" "What did she say exactly?" "She asked if I'd found anything interesting under the table. When I said I'd found a note, she asked if I'd shown it to anyone. I told her I gave it to Grandpa Matt, and she got this weird look on her face." "What kind of weird look? Like she was surprised or maybe mad?" "I don't know. Then she walked away really fast." My pulse quickened. Someone had been monitoring Emily, waiting to see if she'd found the note. This wasn't random. This was orchestrated. I spent the rest of the afternoon with Emily and Jennifer, but my mind was racing. By evening, I'd made a decision. I was going to confront Melissa directly. I found her address through an online directory and drove to her apartment complex in Midtown Sacramento. It was a nice place, modern and expensive, the kind of place a successful legal assistant could afford. When Melissa answered her door, she seemed genuinely surprised to see me. "Matthew, is everything okay? Is Emily all right?" Her concern seemed authentic, but I'd learned not to trust first impressions. "Can we talk?" "It's about the wedding." She invited me in, and I noticed her apartment was meticulously organized. Law books lined one wall, and her dining table was covered with what looked like case files and legal documents. "Melissa, I need to ask you directly. Did you put a note under our table at the wedding yesterday?" Her face went through several emotions: confusion, realization, and then anger. "What kind of note?" "What are you talking about?" I showed her the paper. She read it twice, and the color drained from her face. "Jesus Christ, Matthew. You think I would try to hurt Emily? That little girl means everything to Jennifer, and Jennifer means everything to my brother. Why would I do something that could harm either of them?" "Because you want them to move to Portland." "I want my brother to be happy, yes, but not like this." "Never like this." She sat down heavily on her couch. "Matthew, someone was trying to hurt Emily. Have you called the police?" "Not yet. I wanted to understand what I was dealing with first." Melissa was quiet for a moment, then looked up at me with an expression I couldn't read. "Matthew, there's something you should know. Something I probably should have mentioned before, but I didn't think it was relevant." "What?" 2 weeks ago, I was working late at the firm when I got a call. A woman asking about custody law in Oregon versus California. She wanted to know what would happen if a child with a serious medical condition had an emergency while in the care of one parent. Would it affect custody arrangements? My blood went cold. What did you tell her? I told her that if there was evidence of negligence, it could definitely impact a custody case. She asked very specific questions about diabetes management and what would constitute negligence in the court's eyes. Did you recognize the voice? No, but she knew details about Emily's case. She knew about the proposed move to Portland, knew about David's objections, knew Emily had type 1 diabetes. I assumed it was Jennifer calling for advice, but when I asked, she said no, she'd never called our firm. The room seemed to spin around me. Someone had been planning this for weeks. Someone who knew intimate details about our family situation. Melissa, did your firm keep a record of that call? We should have caller ID logs. Let me check tomorrow. The next morning, I woke up with a plan. If someone had been researching our family for weeks, there had to be a trail. People don't just magically know intimate details about custody battles and medical conditions. They do research, ask questions, leave digital footprints. I started with social media. I'd never been much for Facebook or Instagram, but I knew Jennifer posted photos of Emily regularly. I created a basic Facebook account and searched for Jennifer's profile. What I found made my stomach turn. Jennifer's posts about Emily were public. Everything was there. Photos from doctor's appointments with captions about managing Emily's T1D journey, posts about school events, even specific details about Emily's insulin pump and glucose monitor. Someone could have learned everything they needed to know about Emily's condition just from Jennifer's Facebook feed. But more disturbing were the comments. Going back several months, I found interactions from someone named Sarah M. Portland, who asked very specific questions. How do you calculate insulin for special occasions? Or what happens if she eats too much sugar? Do you ever worry about emergencies when you're not watching her closely? At the time, Jennifer had answered these questions thinking she was helping another parent with a diabetic child. Now they looked like reconnaissance. I screenshotted everything and called Melissa. I found something, I said when she answered. Can you meet me at your office? I think we need to look at that caller ID log right now. An hour later, we were sitting in Melissa's law firm, a modest office in a converted Victorian house near downtown Sacramento. She pulled up the phone records from 2 weeks ago. Here, she pointed to an entry. June 8th, 3:47 p.m. The call lasted 18 minutes. The number had a 503 area code, Portland, Oregon. Can you trace this number? Melissa did a reverse lookup on her computer. It's registered to a Sarah Mitchell in Portland. My blood ran cold. Sarah M. Portland from Facebook. Sarah Mitchell on the phone records. Melissa, I need you to help me understand something. If someone wanted to hurt Emily to affect the custody case, what would be the most effective approach? She looked uncomfortable. Matthew, I really shouldn't be discussing specific legal strategies. My granddaughter's life might depend on this. She sighed. Okay, hypothetically, if someone wanted to make Jennifer look like an unfit mother, they'd need to create a situation where Emily was harmed while under Jennifer's direct supervision. A diabetic emergency at a public event where Jennifer was responsible for Emily's care would be devastating to her case. But the note told someone to add sugar to Emily's plate. If Emily got sick, wouldn't that just look like an accident? Not if there was evidence that it was intentional. Think about it. If Emily had ended up in the hospital with diabetic ketoacidosis, and then someone discovered evidence that sugar had been deliberately added to her food, it would look like Jennifer was either incompetent or deliberately harming her own child. The pieces were clicking into place. The note wasn't meant to be hidden forever. Someone wanted it to be found after Emily got sick. Exactly. Anonymous tip to Child Protective Services. Note gets discovered. Jennifer loses custody. And Kevin is free to take that job in Portland without the complication of a custody battle. But who is Sarah Mitchell? And why would she care about Kevin's job? Melissa was already searching on her computer. Let me check LinkedIn. Here, Sarah Mitchell, Human Resources Director at Cascade Financial Group in Portland. And look at this. Cascade Financial just posted a job opening for a senior accountant position. Kevin's an accountant. More than that, look at the posting date. This job was posted 6 weeks ago. And look at the requirements. They're very specific, almost like they were written for someone with Kevin's exact background. I stared at the screen. You think this Sarah Mitchell created a job specifically to lure Kevin to Portland? I think Sarah Mitchell has been orchestrating this entire situation. The job offer, the pressure on Jennifer to move, the research into Emily's condition, the attempt to sabotage Jennifer's custody. But why? What does she get out of it? Before Melissa could answer, her phone rang. She looked at the caller ID and went pale. It's that same Portland number. We looked at each other for a moment. Then I nodded. Melissa answered and put it on speaker. Melissa Chen, Legal Assistance. Hi, this is Sarah Mitchell. I called a couple weeks ago asking about custody law. I was wondering if you had any updates on that case we discussed. What case? Melissa asked carefully. The diabetic child case. The mother who might be moving to Portland. I was hoping you might have heard something about how that situation resolved. My hands clenched into fists. She was checking to see if her plan had worked. I'm sorry, Melissa said, but I can't discuss specific cases or clients. Of course. I understand. It's just that I'm very invested in making sure the family makes the right decision. The child's well-being is so important, don't you think? The fake concern in her voice made me sick. Can I ask why you're so interested in this particular situation? Melissa asked. There was a pause. Let's just say I have a vested interest in seeing Kevin successful in his new role here. He's exactly what we're looking for, but he needs to be able to relocate without complications. After Sarah hung up, Melissa and I sat in stunned silence. She's not even trying to hide it anymore, Melissa whispered. She basically admitted she's been manipulating the entire situation. I was already standing up. I need to call Jennifer. If Sarah Mitchell is this desperate to get Kevin to Portland, she might try again. But when I called Jennifer's phone, it went straight to voicemail. I tried Kevin's number, same thing. A cold dread settled in my chest. Melissa, what's Kevin's address? We drove to Kevin and Jennifer's house in silence. When we arrived, Kevin's car was in the driveway, but something felt wrong. The front door was standing slightly open. I pushed the door open and called out, Jennifer, Kevin? Kevin appeared from the kitchen looking disheveled and upset. Matthew, what are you doing here? Where are Jennifer and Emily? They went to the park. Jennifer needed some air after... We had a fight this morning. About what? Kevin ran his hands through his hair. About Portland. My boss called this morning and said they needed an answer by end of business today. The job starts next week. Jennifer said she couldn't make such a big decision so quickly, and I said some things I shouldn't have. What kind of things? I told her she was being selfish, that she was holding me back, that maybe Emily would be better off with David anyway if Jennifer couldn't commit to our relationship. I felt sick. Kevin, how long have they been gone? About an hour. They should be back soon. I was already pulling out my phone to call Jennifer again when Kevin's phone rang. He looked at the caller ID and frowned. It's Sarah from HR at Cascade Financial. I should probably take this. Put it on speaker, I said urgently. Kevin looked confused but complied. Hello? Kevin, hi. I just wanted to check in about your decision. I know we're pushing for a quick answer, but I have some good news that might help you decide. What's that? I've been doing some research into custody laws, and it turns out that if Jennifer brings Emily to Portland, the Oregon courts would have jurisdiction over any future custody modifications. David would have a much harder time changing the arrangement from California. Kevin's face went white. How do you know about my custody situation? Oh, I just want to make sure all our new employees are set up for success. Family stability is so important. I grabbed the phone from Kevin. This is Matthew Reynolds, Jennifer's ex-father-in-law. Who the hell are you, and why are you stalking my family? There was a long pause. Mr. Reynolds, how interesting. I was wondering when we'd have a chance to talk. We're talking now. What do you want? What I want is very simple. Gavin takes the job, Jennifer and Emily move to Portland, and everyone lives happily ever after. It's really not that complicated. And if they don't? Well, let's just say that yesterday's incident at the wedding was just a warning. There are so many ways a diabetic child can have an emergency. Restaurants that might accidentally put sugar in a sugar-free drink. Babysitters who might give the wrong medication. School lunches that might be mislabeled. It would be such a tragedy if something like that happened. The line went dead. I looked at Kevin, who was staring at the phone in horror. Kevin, we need to find Jennifer and Emily right now. Kevin and I drove to every park in their neighborhood, calling Jennifer's name, looking for any sign of her silver Honda Civic. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might give out. Try calling again. I told Kevin as we pulled into the parking lot of McKinley Park. Still going straight to voicemail, he said, his voice tight with panic. Matthew, what if Sarah has them? What if she's not just making threats? I was about to answer when my phone rang. Jennifer's number, Jennifer. Thank God, where are you? Grandpa Matt? It was Emily's voice, small and scared. Emily, sweetheart, where are you? Where's your mom? We're at the big park with the duck pond. Mom's sleeping in the car, but I can't wake her up. She fell asleep after the nice lady brought us drinks. My blood turned to ice. Emily, what nice lady? The lady from the parking lot. She said she knew you and Kevin. She had drinks for us because it was so hot. Mom drank hers, but I only had a little sip because mine tasted funny. Emily, listen to me very carefully. Can you see the lady anywhere now? No, she left after Mom fell asleep. But Grandpa Matt, I don't feel good. My tummy hurts, and I'm really thirsty. Diabetic ketoacidosis. The symptoms were starting. Emily, where is your glucose meter? Can you check your blood sugar for me? It's in Mom's purse, but Mom won't wake up. Kevin was already calling 911 while I kept Emily on the line. Emily, I need you to stay on the phone with me, okay? Uncle Kevin and I are coming to get you right now. Which park with the duck pond? Do you know the name? William Land Park. We're by the big playground. We're 15 minutes away, sweetheart. Can you try shaking Mom's shoulder again? I could hear Emily trying to wake Jennifer, her voice getting more distressed. Grandpa Matt, Mom's breathing is weird. It sounds funny. Kevin grabbed my arm. The paramedics are on the way, but they need to know what Jennifer might have been given. Emily, can you describe the drink the lady gave you? What color was it? What did it taste like? It was like lemonade, but Mom said it tasted too sweet. Mine tasted like medicine. Sweet lemonade for Jennifer, probably laced with a sedative. Medicine taste for Emily. Likely something to spike her blood sugar or interfere with her insulin. We reached William Land Park in 12 minutes, Kevin driving like a maniac while I stayed on the phone with Emily. I could hear her breathing getting more labored, her voice getting weaker. We spotted Jennifer's Honda Civic parked near the duck pond. Jennifer was unconscious in the driver's seat, and Emily was in the back, pale and listless. Emily... I yanked open the back door and pulled her into my arms. Her skin was hot and dry, and I could smell the fruity odor on her breath that indicated ketones. Kevin was checking Jennifer's pulse. She's breathing, but I can't wake her up. The paramedics arrived within minutes. As they worked on Jennifer and Emily, one of them asked me what I knew about what they'd ingested. We think Jennifer was drugged with some kind of sedative, and Emily was given something to raise her blood sugar. This was intentional. The paramedic looked grim as she checked Emily's blood glucose. 480. We need to get her to the hospital immediately. As they loaded Emily into the ambulance, she grabbed my hand. Grandpa Matt, the lady said to tell you something. What did she say, sweetheart? She said Kevin has until tomorrow morning to give his answer, or next time she won't be so nice. Kevin's face went white. Matthew, this is my fault. I should have never applied for that job. I should have seen the red flags. What red flags? The job posting was too perfect. It matched my resume exactly down to the specific software I use. The salary was way above market rate. And Sarah has been calling me almost daily, even though that's not normal for HR. I thought it was just because they really wanted me. But she was manipulating the situation from the beginning. At UC Davis Medical Center, the doctors stabilized Emily, while Jennifer was treated for what appeared to be rohypnol poisoning. As I sat in the waiting room, my phone rang. "Portland area code, Mr. Reynolds?" "Sarah Mitchell, I presume. I'm sorry about today's unpleasantness, but Jennifer and Kevin left me no choice. I need Kevin in Portland, and I need him focused on his work, not distracted by custody battles. You poisoned a 7-year-old girl." I gave her a little glucose solution. Nothing that would cause permanent damage. Think of it as a demonstration of what could happen if this situation isn't resolved quickly. You're insane. I'm thorough. Do you know how hard it is to find someone with Kevin's exact qualifications? I've been working on filling this position for 8 months. Kevin is perfect, brilliant with numbers, detail-oriented, and desperate enough to relocate quickly if properly motivated. By threatening his family? By removing obstacles? Jennifer's custody situation was keeping Kevin from committing fully to the position. The solution was simple. Create circumstances that would make Portland the obvious choice. It's over, Sarah. We know who you are. We have records of your calls. We have evidence. The police are already involved, she laughed. "Mr. Reynolds, I work in corporate HR. Do you have any idea how many ways there are to make someone's life difficult without technically breaking the law? Background check discrepancies, reference call concerns, social media red flags. Kevin will never work in accounting again if he doesn't take this job, and if he does take it, then Emily gets the best medical care in Oregon. Jennifer gets a fresh start, and Kevin gets the career opportunity of a lifetime. Everyone wins, except you've shown you're willing to hurt a child to get what you want. What happens the next time Kevin doesn't do exactly what you want?" Another pause. "I think you're overestimating how often that would be an issue. Kevin is very manageable." The line went dead. I immediately called Detective Rodriguez, the Sacramento police officer who had taken my statement about the wedding incident. When I explained what had happened, he took it very seriously. "We'll coordinate with Portland police to bring her in for questioning. But Mr. Reynolds, you need to understand, proving she was involved in today's incident is going to be difficult. She wasn't physically present. There are no witnesses who can identify her, and her phone records will probably show she was in Portland all day." "What about the drinks?" "Can't you test them for drugs? Emily threw hers away, and Jennifer finished hers. Without the actual containers or remaining liquid, we can't prove what was in them." I hung up, feeling helpless and furious. Sarah Mitchell had orchestrated the perfect crime. Untraceable, unprovable, and devastating in its effectiveness. But she had made one crucial mistake. She had underestimated how far a grandfather would go to protect his granddaughter. 3 days later, Emily was stable and back home, but the fear in her eyes every time a stranger approached broke my heart. Jennifer was recovering from the sedative, and Kevin had quit his current job, telling his boss he was taking the Portland position. But I had other plans. I'd spent those 3 days researching Sarah Mitchell with the same obsessive attention she'd given my family. What I found was a pattern that went back years. Sarah wasn't just an HR director. She was a corporate headhunter who specialized in difficult relocations. Her LinkedIn showed a history of placing executives in positions that required them to move away from family complications. Messy divorces, custody battles, elderly parents requiring care. Sarah had a talent for making these obstacles disappear. I found 3 similar cases over the past 5 years. A software engineer in Phoenix, whose ex-wife had mysteriously been arrested for drug possession, making custody simple. A marketing executive in Denver, whose elderly father had been declared incompetent after a suspicious fall, clearing the way for his relocation. A financial analyst in Atlanta, whose teenage daughter had been expelled from school for cheating that the girl swore she didn't do. Sarah Mitchell was a professional life destroyer, but she had one weakness. Her own success had made her arrogant. She documented everything. I flew to Portland on Thursday morning, telling no one where I was going. I rented a car and drove to Cascade Financial Group's headquarters, a gleaming glass tower in the Pearl District. I didn't go inside. Instead, I waited in the parking garage until 5:47 p.m., when Sarah Mitchell emerged from the elevator wearing a charcoal business suit and carrying a designer briefcase. She walked alone to her car, a white BMW sedan with Oregon plates. I followed her home to a modern condo in the South Waterfront District. I waited until dark, then rang her doorbell. When Sarah opened the door, her confident smile faltered for just a moment before returning full force. "Mr. Reynolds, what a delightful surprise. I wasn't expecting you in Portland so soon. We need to talk." She stepped aside to let me in. Her condo was immaculate, all clean lines and neutral colors. The walls were covered with certificates of achievement and photos of Sarah with various corporate executives. "Can I offer you something to drink? Coffee, water?" She smiled. "Don't worry, it's safe. I only drug children when absolutely necessary." The casual cruelty of that statement made my hands clench into fists. "I know what you've been doing, Sarah. Not just to my family. Phoenix, Denver, Atlanta. I know about all of them." Her smile never wavered. "I'm very good at my job. Your job is human resources, not human destruction. My job is solving problems for my clients. Sometimes those problems happen to be human." She poured herself a glass of wine and settled onto her white leather couch. "Mr. Reynolds, Kevin will be here in Portland by Monday. He's already signed the paperwork. Jennifer and Emily will follow within the month. My client gets exactly what they wanted, a brilliant accountant with no distractions. Everyone wins. My granddaughter could have died, but she didn't. I'm very careful with my dosages, just enough to create the desired effect, never enough to cause permanent harm." She sipped her wine. "Well, almost never." "What do you mean, almost never?" "The software engineer in Phoenix, his ex-wife was supposed to just spend a night in jail on those drug possession charges. I didn't anticipate that she'd have a severe reaction to the cocaine I planted in her car. Prison medical care is so unreliable." My vision went red. "She died? Drug overdose in county lockup. Very tragic. But it did solve my client's custody problem permanently." I stood up. "You're a monster. I'm a professional. And Mr. Reynolds, you're going to walk out of here and never speak of this conversation again." "Like hell I am." Sarah reached for her phone. "One call from me and Emily has another diabetic emergency. This time, maybe the paramedics don't arrive in time. Maybe her glucose meter malfunctions. Maybe her insulin gets contaminated. There are so many tragic accidents that can befall a diabetic child. You're bluffing. You're here in Portland. You can't hurt Emily from here. Mr. Reynolds, I have associates in every major city, people who owe me favors, people who understand that sometimes business requires unpleasant actions." She scrolled through her phone. "Here's one in Sacramento, a nurse at UC Davis Medical Center who owes me a favor from a job placement last year. One call from me, and Emily's next medical emergency becomes fatal. You won't do it. Too risky. Try me." I walked to her floor-to-ceiling windows and looked out at the Portland skyline. "You know what I learned in 43 years of construction, Sarah? I'm sure you're going to tell me. I learned that every building has weak points, structural vulnerabilities that can bring the whole thing down if you know where to apply pressure." I turned back to her. "You documented everything, didn't you? Every case, every manipulation, every crime. You kept records because you're proud of your work." Her smile flickered. "I also learned that the best way to bring down a building isn't with explosives or a wrecking ball. It's by exposing the foundation rot to the right people. I pulled out my phone and played a recording. Her own voice filled the room. I gave her a little glucose solution. Think of it as a demonstration of what could happen. I work in corporate HR. Do you have any idea how many ways there are to make someone's life difficult? You recorded our phone calls, every single one, along with your confession about Phoenix, Denver, and Atlanta. I smiled. You know what else I learned? Prison medical care really is unreliable, especially for people who hurt children. Sarah's face went white. You can't prove any of this. I don't need to prove it in court, Sarah. I just need to prove it to the right people. I held up a flash drive. Copies of all your files, all our recorded conversations, and detailed documentation of your methods are currently in the hands of the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division, the Oregon State Bar Association, every major news outlet in Portland, and every single one of your corporate clients. That's impossible. Those files are password protected. You know what else I learned in construction? Sometimes the best tool for the job isn't the most expensive one. It's the most motivated one. I smiled. My brother Richard might be a reformed thief, but he still remembers how to get into places he doesn't belong. Your password was Cascade Winds 2024, by the way. Very original. Sarah's hands were shaking now. Those clients will destroy you. They have more money and power than you can imagine. Maybe, but they also have something more important, reputations to protect. And when the story breaks tomorrow morning about how their star headhunter murdered a woman in Phoenix and poisoned a diabetic child in California, they're going to cut ties with you faster than you can say criminal conspiracy. Her phone started ringing. Then mine, then hers again. Sounds like the story's breaking early, I said. You should probably answer that. Sarah looked at her phone screen. Her largest client. Don't bother, I continued. I already sent them the recordings of you admitting to drugging children and murdering inconvenient ex-wives. They called the FBI an hour ago. The color drained completely from her face. What do you want? Justice, Sarah. Something you've been stealing from families for years. Red and blue lights were flashing outside her windows now. Portland Police, FBI, probably half a dozen agencies alerted by the evidence I'd provided. Here's what's going to happen, I said as the sirens got louder. You're going to spend the rest of your life in prison. Your clients are going to face federal charges for conspiracy. And every family you've destroyed is going to get the justice they deserved. The doorbell rang. Heavy knocking. FBI, open the door. Sarah looked at me with pure hatred. You have no idea what you've done. These people don't just disappear quietly. They have resources, connections. They have lawyers. Sarah, and lawyers don't work for free when their clients become toxic liabilities. As the FBI agents entered her condo, Sarah made one last desperate play. Agent Morrison, I'm Sarah Mitchell. I've been working undercover for months to expose a criminal network of corporate executives engaged in... Miss Mitchell, Agent Morrison interrupted. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you. As they led her away in handcuffs, Sarah caught my eye one last time. This isn't over. Yes, I said quietly. It is. 3 weeks later, I was back in Sacramento, watching Emily play in the backyard, while Jennifer and Kevin worked together to plan their future, a future that would happen on their terms, not because of some corporate psychopath's manipulation. Kevin had found a new job with a local firm that valued his skills without demanding his soul. Jennifer had decided they weren't ready to leave California yet. But maybe someday they'd consider Portland when it was their choice, not someone else's ultimatum. David and Sarah had returned from their honeymoon to find their family safe and a story that would be talked about for years. Richard had called to check on Emily and to tell me he was proud of how I'd handled everything. We still had a lot to work through, but for the first time in 15 years, it felt like we might actually be brothers again. And Emily? Emily was just a 7-year-old girl again, playing with her toys and asking for extra dessert. Her blood sugar carefully monitored by people who loved her, not by someone who saw her as a disposable pawn in a corporate game. The news broke nationally 2 days later. Corporate headhunter arrested in multi-state conspiracy. Sarah Mitchell was facing federal charges in 4 states, and the investigation had revealed a network of corrupt executives who had been paying premium fees for her obstacle removal services. The woman in Phoenix's family finally had answers about why she died. The Denver executive's elderly father was moved to proper care after investigators discovered he'd been given drugs to simulate dementia. The Atlanta teenager was cleared of cheating charges when forensic analysis revealed her test answers had been altered after submission. Sarah Mitchell got 35 years in federal prison. Her corporate clients got varying sentences, but none of them will be making hiring decisions again anytime soon. As for me, I learned that sometimes the best way to protect your family isn't to stay out of trouble. It's to make sure the right people get into exactly the trouble they deserve. And I learned that a grandfather's love really can move mountains, expose corruption, and bring down corporate psychopaths who think children are just collateral damage in their business plans. Emily is 9 now, healthy and happy, and she still calls me every Sunday to tell me about her week. She doesn't remember much about the wedding or the hospital, but she remembers that when she needed me, Grandpa Matt was there. That's all that matters. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. We share real stories about real families facing extraordinary circumstances. Your support helps us continue bringing you the dramatic, emotional, and inspiring stories that remind us all what really matters in life, protecting the people we love, no matter what it costs. Thank you for listening. And remember, sometimes the most ordinary people are capable of the most extraordinary things when their family is threatened.